The wind arrives first, long before the snow. It comes off the southern ocean like a warning, bending the grasses flat, sanding the cliffs with salt, and turning the shoreline into a place where every breath has to be earned. In Patagonia, winter does not simply arrive. Winter tests. It presses cold against bone and feather. It steals heat faster than muscles can make it. And it forces every living thing to decide again and again what matters most. Motion or stillness, risk or hunger, shelter or distance. This is not just a landscape at the edge of the world. It is a proving ground shaped by ice, tide, and time. And by the end of this journey, you will understand why a penguin's simplest step through a storm can be one of nature's greatest acts of courage. Welcome to frozen Patagonia, where the sea is both pantry and predator, and where the sky can change its mind in the space of a heartbeat. If you are enjoying this kind of expedition into the wild, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter. And tell me, where are you watching from right now? Patagonia sits where the cold breath of Antarctica meets the restless power of the Atlantic and the Pacific. Here, weather is not background. Weather is a living force, sculpted by currents, mountains, and latitude, and it writes the rules for everyone who survives. The air is dry and sharp, the winds are relentless, and the seasons feel like a long negotiation between light and darkness. Energy is the true currency of this world. Every calorie is hunted, guarded, or stolen. Every wasted movement costs heat. Every delay can mean the difference between returning to the colony or vanishing into the surf. Out at sea, life gathers in invisible layers. Cold, nutrient-rich water rises from the depths, feeding plankton, which feeds small fish, which feeds the hunters above. This is the science of the Southern Ocean, upwelling and currents, a conveyor belt of nutrients that can turn empty water into a moving feast. Now picture it, a dark sea under a low iron sky, white foam torn into ribbons by wind, and at the surface a sudden scatter of baitfish flashing like thrown coins because something below has decided it is time to feed. For penguins, this is not just a meal, it is a mission. They are birds that traded the sky for the sea, and in return they gained a body designed for cold water and deep dives. Dense bones that reduce buoyancy, flippers that beat like oars, feathers packed so tightly they form a living coat of armor, trapping air and heat against the skin. But Patagonia is never generous for long. The same ocean that offers fish also offers hypothermia, waves, and predators that have been perfecting their craft for ages. In this story, we will follow a collection of survival strategies, each one a different answer to the same question: how do you stay alive when the storm takes the world away? The first threat is the simplest and the most brutal: cold itself. A Patagonian gale does not merely chill, it strips warmth from the body like a thief in the dark. The adaptation is teamwork, because in this place, solitude is expensive. Penguins huddle not out of sentiment, but out of physics. Shoulder to shoulder, they create a shared wall against wind, turning many small bodies into one larger heat source. Look closely at the detail. Individuals rotate from the freezing edge toward the warmer center, a slow, patient choreography that spreads the cost of exposure. Imagine the scene. Snow needles across the beach, and a tight, breathing circle of birds stands firm, eyes narrowed, backs to the wind, while the storm searches for a weakness. The conclusion is simple and sharp. In Patagonia, community is not comfort. It is survival. The second threat is hunger, because storms do not just freeze the land, they close the ocean. High swells and violent surf can make feeding a gamble, and a penguin that cannot eat cannot burn energy to stay warm. The adaptation is timing and efficiency. Penguins do not waste effort when the sea is angry. They watch, they wait, and they strike when the moment opens. The detail is written in their movement. A low stance at the waterline, a sudden sprint, then a clean dive timed between collapsing waves. Picture it. A bird stands at the edge, surf exploding around its feet. Then it launches into a window of calmer water, vanishing beneath the foam as if swallowed by the sea itself. The conclusion is a single truth. Patience can be as powerful as speed. The third threat comes from above. In winter, the sky can look empty, but it is never truly silent. Opportunistic birds patrol the coast, scanning for weakness, for distraction, for anything that can be taken with a single violent motion. The adaptation is vigilance and positioning. Penguins keep their heads moving, their bodies angled, their groups tight, because an attacker looks for the stray, the delayed, the isolated. The detail is in their voice and posture. Short, sharp calls that ripple through the colony, and a sudden tightening of formation as every bird becomes harder to target. Imagine the scene. A dark shape cuts across the grey sky, wings locked, and the colony answers instantly, compressing like a living shield. The conclusion lands like a stone. Attention is a form of armor. The fourth threat is hidden in the water, where the cold conceals predators that do not need the storm to hunt. Along these coasts, seals and sea lions rule the shoreline, and farther out, larger hunters patrol the channels where penguins must travel. The adaptation is agility and unpredictability. Penguins do not swim in straight lines when danger is possible. They zigzag, they dive, they change depth, turning pursuit into a problem that costs the predator energy. The physical detail is unmistakable. A sudden burst of speed powered by flippers that beat with relentless rhythm. Then an abrupt drop into deeper, darker water where the surface becomes a trap. Picture the scene. A penguin rockets through green water, bubbles trailing like smoke, while a shadow behind adjusts, hesitates, and falls back. The conclusion is a quiet defiance. To survive, you do not need to be stronger than the hunter, only harder to catch. The fifth threat is exhaustion, the slow enemy that arrives after days of cold and scarcity. Even the best coat of feathers cannot protect a body that has burned too much fuel. The adaptation is economy. Penguins reduce heat loss by tucking their heads, by lowering their profiles, by choosing routes that shelter them behind rocks and ledges. The behavioral detail is subtle but profound. A bird will pause in the lee of a boulder, letting the stone break the wind, then continue in short bursts rather than one long wasteful march. Imagine the scene. A line of penguins moves across a pale beach, stopping where the land offers a brief mercy, then continuing into the open as if each step has been carefully negotiated. The conclusion is a sentence the landscape repeats every day. Endurance is built from small decisions. And through all of this runs the central paradox of Patagonia, a contrast that never stops tightening its grip. Beauty and brutality, silence and struggle, cold and life. This is not just winter weather, it is a shaping force that chisels resilience into muscle and instinct. Now the storm deepens, and the world turns white. Wind lifts snow from the ground and throws it sideways, erasing edges, flattening distance. For the colony, this is the moment where everything narrows to essentials. If adults cannot reach the sea, hunger grows. If they cannot return, the colony thins. If the storm lingers, the future itself begins to wobble. In the climax, the shoreline becomes a battlefield without weapons, a confrontation between physics and flesh. Waves detonate against rock with a sound like breaking stone. The water is a moving wall. A penguin must choose the exact second to enter, because the wrong second can smash it against the shallows or drag it back onto the sand. One bird steps forward, then another, then a small group. They wait, heads tilted, reading the rhythm of the sea as if listening for a code. Then the opening comes. They run, they leap, and the ocean takes them. Under the surface, the storm continues in another language. Turbulence churns the water, reducing visibility, turning hunting into instinct. A predator may appear as a sudden shape, a flash of teeth, a pressure wave that the body feels before the eyes can see. A penguin dives deeper, heart slowing, oxygen rationed, wings driving it through darkness. Above, the colony waits, and every minute stretches. When the first bird finally breaches near shore, drenched and shivering, it does not celebrate. It simply scrambles onto land and shakes free the water, because water is cold, and cold is debt. This is not just a return, it is a repayment to life. But Patagonia's ancient balance is shifting, and it is not the wind that is changing first. It is the wider world. Ocean temperatures rise and fall in unfamiliar patterns, and that can move fish schools farther from the coast, forcing longer trips that burn more energy. Human industry competes for the same waters, and when fishing pressure grows, it can thin the prey that penguins depend on. Pollution does not need to be dramatic to be deadly. A single strand of plastic can become a snare, and a slick of oil can ruin the insulating power of feathers, turning a living coat into a wet burden. Roads, ships, and development reshape coastlines, bringing noise, light, and disturbance into places that once belonged only to wind and tide. This is not just a story about storms, it is a story about thresholds. And yet, hope is not a fantasy here. Hope is something you can measure, something you can protect. Across Patagonia, protected areas and marine reserves create sanctuaries where breeding colonies can endure with less disturbance. Scientists track migration, diet, and survival, following penguins across seasons to understand what changes first and what can be stabilized. Conservation groups work to reduce bycatch, to manage fisheries more responsibly, and to respond quickly when pollution strikes. And local communities, including indigenous voices with deep knowledge of place, remind the modern world that stewardship is not a new idea. It is an old one, refined by generations who learn to read the same wind. This is not just saving a bird, it is defending a whole chain of life, from plankton to predator, from shoreline to deep sea. This is not just protection, it is respect made practical. Now, as the storm begins to loosen its grip, the coastline reappears in fragments. A cliff face emerges from blowing snow. A patch of dark water opens between whitecaps. Penguins stand again at the edge of land and sea, small bodies against a vast horizon, and the ancient routine resumes. A huddle tightens, then relaxes. A watchful head turns toward the sky. A group steps forward in single file, footprints stitching a temporary story across the sand. Out beyond the breakers, the ocean heaves and glitters, beautiful and cruel, indifferent and essential. They are still here, still walking, still diving, still returning. And that is the final lesson of frozen Patagonia. Life does not defeat the storm by conquering it, but by enduring it again and again, with adaptations as old as the wind. Tell me in the comments what surprised you most about how penguins survive this world. And if you want more journeys like this, please subscribe, because the wild is still writing its stories, and we are only beginning to learn how to listen.